Wiess dusted some crumbs from her chin and laid the napkin down on the table. Though they hadn't left Beacon, Winter had brought her to a more private area set aside for visitors and important guests. The food was the same fare, but served at their table, and it afforded some privacy, not to mention a beautiful view of Beacon's gardens. The weather was warm and soft. It might be nice to bring Jean out for some fresh air, in fact. They always did say sunlight was good for the human body. "I've lost you again, haven't I?" Wiess blinked, and then immediately felt blood rush to her cheeks when she saw her sister's indulgent smile. I apologize, Winter. I was just thinking about your partner." "Yes." She nodded. It took her a second to realize what that sounded like, and she quickly added, "About his recovery. I was just thinking some fresh air might serve him well." "How is he?" "Better. He hasn't yet recovered, not from what happened, or from the malnutrition. There is progress, however. I'm confident he'll be back to normal within a week or so, although we still need to keep an eye on him." "That is good to hear. You've been caring for him quite thoroughly. I've hardly seen you these last few days." Winter dipped a spoon into her tea and stirred it. I apologize. I didn't mean to ignore you. It's just that he is my partner and teammate. His recovery... I understand, dear sister. Worry not. I'm hardly offended. In fact, it speaks well of you to take such responsibility seriously. Once upon a time, that praise might have meant something to her, but now all she could think of was whether he was okay and how Yang and Blake were holding up. "Don't be silly," she told herself. "You've been gone almost an hour at most. He's probably still sound asleep." "I did want to talk to you on one matter, however," Winter continued. "It's about your recent mission and its conclusion." Wiess paid only minimal attention, but hummed nonetheless at the end. "At the end of it, I can't help but criticize how you placed yourself in harm's way." That surprised her, enough so as to bring her back to reality and make her stare at her sister. "Excuse me?" "Your partner," Winter explained. "I understand he was not in control of himself, and he can hardly be blamed for that. Still, it was a risky prospect for you to rush in like you did and try to calm him." "Jean wouldn't hurt me, or any of us," she added. "He wouldn't hurt his team. Not when he is in his right mind, perhaps, but you and I both know he wasn't at that time. There was a good chance he wouldn't even be capable of recognizing you as being on his team. He might have even hallucinated and seen you as a Grimm." Winter leaned forward. "Your casual disregard for your safety might have cost you your life, Wiess." "It didn't, though." "No. And for that we can call this episode closed. However, if something like that were to happen again in the future, it would be best to err on the side of caution. Your partner could have been subdued without any risk to you or anyone else." Wiess took a deep breath and looked at her sister. "There would have been a risk to him, admittedly," Winter said, a little surprised, "but no more than what he had already faced. In a situation like that, it's the responsibility of a commanding officer to make the best decision for everyone. I'll keep that in mind and pass it on to our commanding officer once he's recovered. Unfortunately, he was a little indisposed at the time." "There's no need for cheek, Wiess. I'm sure I have no idea what you mean, Winter," Wiess said. She kept her gaze steady as she looked at the older woman. Inside, however, her mind was running wild. "What am I doing? I've never argued with Winter like this before. When he was incapacitated, which can be mentally as well as physically, it would fall on you to make the right choice in his stead. I believe I made the right decision. Putting yourself in harm's way was not the right decision, Wiess. It feels like you're allowing your emotions to influence your decision." "Yes!" Wiess snapped. "Yes, I am. That is not something to be proud of." Wiess felt a flare of irritation at the look on her sister's face. She scowled and pushed her seat back a little, though she didn't stand and leave entirely. "I am quite content with the choice I made, thank you. My team came out unhurt, and Blake and Yang approve of how I helped out our leader. More importantly, he came out unharmed from the encounter, whereas subduing him might have led to injury. I made that decision based on my emotions. I agree, but I don't regret it. Wiess, a leader needs to make clear and calculated decisions. Perhaps you misunderstood my letters, sister. I am not the leader of my team. No, you are a Snee, but in time you will become a leader, be that of a team, business, or something else. I don't intend to usurp the position from my partner. After Beacon, Winter sighed and rolled her eyes. While you might not be a leader now, you surely will be in time. After Beacon? After her team? She'd forgotten there would be an after, and that thought unsettled her. She would be quite content remaining on their team and doing missions together. That wasn't so unlikely, was it? Surely. Other teams did the same. She decided not to mention that to Winter. It would only lead to another argument. Your relationship with your partner is clouding your mind. It's already led to this, and I'm just concerned what it might lead to in the future. My relationship? Wiess laughed. Jean rejected me, Winter, and quite publicly at that. There is no relationship between us. He did reject you, Winter said, but that does not seem to have stopped you from pining after him. Do not think I haven't noticed, Wiess. Your attraction towards him, and I have no idea what it is you find as such. It's going to lead to disaster. Wiess's temper flared, but she bit down on it. She had to resist the instinctive desire to list off his best qualities too, but that would just prove Winter's point. Yes, she had been rejected, and yes, it had meant an end to her feelings. Had someone expected it would? Did they not say that a Snee did not give up? Was it not a lesson she'd been taught so many times before? That a Snee persevered where others faltered, and that a Snee could attain anything they wanted. I'm not sure where this conversation is going, Winter. Wiess. The older woman sighed and crossed her arms on the table before her. Winter's expression was neutral, a little too neutral, as though she was uncertain how her following words would be taken. After some time to think about it, she began. I have decided that I cannot approve of the relationship between you and your partner. I apologize, Wiess. Okay? Okay. Winter blinked in surprise. Well, I admit, I expected you to take the news worse than that. It might be best to consider requesting a change of team or an assignment to... That won't be necessary, Winter. Excuse me? Wiess looked up from the table, eyes as cold as ice. Her smile felt brittle too, but not quite as temptress as her thoughts, which swirled like a blizzard. I said that won't be necessary. I already have a team here at Beacon, and I have no intention of seeing that change. Did you not hear what I said? I heard. You said you did not approve. Wiess turned her head to the side. I do not. I fail to see how your disapproval inhibits me. I choose who I spend my time with, not you. Is that so? Winter asked. She seemed surprised, and not without a good reason. Her approval always mattered before. No matter the subject, Wiess never did anything that would make her look bad in her sister's eyes. Things have changed now. I'm so sorry, Winter, but I have a family to look out for, and I simply don't trust the three of them to make it through without me. It is so, she said. I appreciate your concern, but I believe it is time to make my own decisions. I hope you can understand, but I will accept if you cannot. I understand, Winter said, eyes narrowed. I understand that you are making a grave mistake. Look at the events that have transpired around you thanks to that team. As a Snee, you were already a target for the White Fang, but things have only gotten worse for you. You could have died facing Torchwick and the White Fang in that warehouse, and now, you could have died against them both in Mountain Glen. Your partner, no, your entire team, are a liability that might get you killed. If so, then I'll be there to stop it, Wiess snapped. Her own words surprised her, or perhaps the tone she took with her sister, who looked equally shocked. Wiess took that moment's hesitation and ran with it. My place is here. and I have made my decision, Winter. Not you, not Father, not even the world itself can change that." Winter opened her mouth to speak, but soon decided against it and shook her head instead. Wiess was prepared for a counter-argument, for whatever point her sister might raise, but Winter no doubt realized and decided now was not the time. "He has been trying to reach you." Wiess's eyes narrowed. "Father?" she asked, and waited for her sister's nod. "What does he want?" "The same thing as ever, I would assume." "You cannot ignore him, Wiess. He is your father." "Our father," Wiess said. "And yet I don't see you rushing back to Atlas. My responsibilities preclude me from such, as do mine. Responsibilities can be changed. These can't." "Are you so sure?" Wiess's hands curled into fists atop the table. She eyed her sister, but the older woman showed nothing on her face. "What are you trying to say? My partner is injured and I don't have the patience for word games, Winter." "I simply mean what I said, Wiess. You pointed out that I, not Father, nor the world itself could change your circumstances." Winter lifted one hand to push some hair away, and also displayed a shiny snowflake on the collar of her uniform. "You ought to remember that it's not exactly true. Father is influential as he is powerful." "Is that a threat?" "No. I disapprove, but I would never threaten my own sister." Winter smiled to make it clear, and it allowed Wiess to relax just a little bit. "It's simply a little advice, crossed with a warning. If Father sees no results in trying to seek with you quarterly, he might make a more assertive route." The warning was clear. Through economic, political, or plain old connections, her father could reach her, even in Vale. "I will keep your words in mind, Winter. That's all I ask." Winter sighed and stood up from her seat to step past her. As she did, she let her hand fall onto Wiess's shoulder. "When your partner is awake, wish him well for me. Though I may not approve of you and he together, I find him to be an interesting person. I would be disappointed if he fell to what Torchwick did to him." "Thank you, Winter. I'll pass on your wishes." Winter nodded and moved away, heels echoing till she was gone entirely. Still at the table, hands balled into fist before her, Wiess let out a long breath and leaned back. She almost expected her scroll to ring at that very moment, but life was not so ironic and her father made no such attempt. It did little to lessen the weight on her shoulders, however. He always had that effect on her. Yang dragged Blake down one of the halls and away from their room. Nora and Ruby had shown up to keep an eye on Jean, and she trusted her little sister enough to know he was in good hands. Also, Nora was bizarrely reliable in her own way. You wouldn't trust her with just about anything in a normal situation, but if it was serious enough, you could trust her with a live dust explosive and a truck full of babies. Jean was neither, but he certainly whined like one every time they needed to force food into him. "Yang, what is it?" Blake asked, not exactly thrilled to be tugged down the corridor. "We need a daughter-daughter conference." "Can't it wait?" "Yes." "Will it wait?" Blake sighed when she was still being dragged along. "No." Blake sighed and gave in. It only took another 5 minutes or so to drag her partner into Paul's classroom, disused as it was since lessons were off for a week or two because of so many people being on missions. She latched the door shut behind her and stalked over to the main desk. Blake sat down atop it, but watched really as Yang stalked back and forth. "Yang, what's the matter?" she finally asked. "Jean, well, yes, I guess that. I don't see the problem though. He's getting better." Blake shrugged. "Slowly, I'll admit. But he's going to make a full recovery." Yang turned to face her partner with an agitated expression. "What about next time?" she asked. "Will he be okay the next time he rushes off into danger and nearly gets himself killed? The time after? Or the time after that?" I'm not sure what you mean." "It's..." Yang sighed and threw her arms in the air. It's not you, Blake. I'm just worried about what's causing all of this from him. When we first met him, he was lazy and unmotivated. And now that we're becoming some weird kind of anti-terrorist squad, I'm worried he won't be able to keep up. Especially if he keeps rushing into danger like this. It's like a Bruce Willis movie, except that he doesn't get the benefit of months to recover before the sequel. Interesting way to put it. Do you get my point though? Vaguely. Blake sighed and placed her hands behind her, pushing herself up so she could kneel atop the desk. You're worried we're treating his injuries, only for him to rush and get hurt again. Yang slammed a hand down on her desk. Exactly! I love him. I really do. But that means it hurts to see him like this, and it's becoming more and more a regular thing. I'm just worried his luck can't hold forever. Hell, with everything that happens, he doesn't even have luck. It's more brute force stubbornness. You can't tell me you haven't noticed. Of course I have, Yang. Blake looked up towards the ceiling and let out a long breath. I feel like I've noticed it before anyone else. Not that I could place what it was at the time. In fact, this all started because of my running away. The docks? Blake nodded. That was when he first started to act out. Or at least in terms of actually fighting in dangerous situations. After that, it was the two of us hunting down warehouses, and that moved on to Mountain Glen. Blake looked away with a frown. All 3 of those cases included the White Fang, and all 3 were initiated because of a mistake I made. Maybe it's me that's the problem here. You're not the problem, Yang said firmly. How can you say that though? The recent episodes happened because I nearly got caught and he pulled me back. If it wasn't for that, then you would have been through it in his place. She interrupted. It still wasn't the big problem though, and she didn't want Blake to miss that. Keep in mind, you were only there because you followed after he left the camp. Jean was the one to make the first move, and that's what bothers me. What if this continues, Blake? What if he keeps throwing himself in trouble like this? Something is going to give someday, and I think we both know what that will be. His body already failed this time and he could have died. Yang's eyes were deadly serious. He might not be so lucky next time. I know, Yang. This is why I asked you and Wiess to help me with the warehouses. I could see he was working himself to exhaustion. He got furious at us though. What are we supposed to do about it here? He was angry. Yang agreed. But he was alive. Blake looked at her for a few seconds before she groaned into the palm of her hand. I can already tell I'm not going to like this. You probably won't, and neither will Jean. But I feel like it has to be done. What about Wiess? I kinda want to keep it separate from her. Yang tried to look innocent, but the way Blake's eyes narrowed ruined it somehow. It's not because it's bad, she said. I feel like Wiess is already putting enough onto our team. Maybe even too much. Jean may be our leader technically, but she's the one who does the most work and she's already worried sick about him, and that's before her feelings are brought into it. Yang shrugged helplessly. I just feel like we should give her a break and do this on our own. We can call it the daughtery duo or something, yeah? I'll agree to do whatever this is, so long as you don't call it that. Blake sighed and wrapped her arms around her knees. So, I take it this is about trying to find out why he suddenly decided to wander off into an abandoned wasteland on his own? That among many things. Yang pushed past Blake to the teacher's board, and for a moment, even considered using the chalk to draw on it. It would be kinda pointless though, and what she was about to say really didn't need to be spread across the school. Do you remember when you first revealed you were a Faunus? Do you remember what he said about the White Fang? Hard not to. He hates them. Not just a Schnee kind of hate, but a deeper, emotional kind. Like he's lost someone to them. Yang agreed. He also went out of his way to kill them at the docks. We always assumed it was because he had no choice. But there should still be some hesitation. Yang looked at her partner, and it didn't take long to put the pieces together. Unless he wanted to kill them, Blake said. I always assumed he just didn't have a problem killing. But now that I think about it, it's only the White Fang he's killed in that way. He fought to kill Tortrick on the train, or from what you saw, Yang added. But that could have been because he was working with them, or maybe just the drugs. The point is, he has some obvious history with them, and I can't help but think it's going to lead to disaster. I thought it was strange when he agreed to help me with the warehouses so easily. I assumed it was just because he didn't trust me not to get hurt. But he didn't put much effort into trying to convince me to stop. Blake looked up. Do you think he wanted to raid them? Yang shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe it was a bit of both. I don't know. What I do know is that it looks to have cropped up again in Mountain Glen, and that led to him getting in trouble for it. And you want to stop it, Blake summarized. That's what this plan is. Yang nodded, a determined expression across her face. Whether he did it for the right or wrong reasons, it was still a dangerous game he was playing. Saving Blake was one thing, and she'd never criticized that. But Mountain Glen? That had just been foolish. We need to know the reasons first, though. Yang said, That's what I need your help for. And I've been trying to figure him out for ages, but I'm coming up with nothing. All I've got is that he hates the Fang, enough to suggest he lost someone to them, and that he'll go out of his way to look after us. He fears it happening again. The White Fang taking someone, I mean. That's a fair bet. Blake's expression scrunched up as she recalled something. A few moments later, she slapped her hand into her face and groaned. What is it? Yang asked. Back when Jean and I first met, I only just remembered it. It might shine a little light on the whole thing. At least I think so. Oh? Story time. Yang motioned for Blake to give her a little room, and then climbed up into the desk and crossed her legs beneath it. Port might have had something to say, especially since there were seats all across the room, but that made it feel all too much like work. It was on the train. Blake began. I was running a mission with the White Fang, and my mentor specifically, Adam Torres. The vehicle was supposed to be just a dust shipment from the SDC, traveling to Vale through Foreverfall. For some reason, it was running mixed cargo though, with the dust at the back and passengers up front. Jean and his family were among them. The faunus looked lost for a moment but quickly recovered. I won't go into the reasons why we were there. I'm sure you can guess them. But after we cleared up some of the SDC droids, Adam decided to set explosives to destroy the train and the dust. What about the passengers? Blake laughed dryly. That's what I said. Those are the very words that caused me to give up on the White Fang. It didn't take a genius to figure out what her old partner's words must have been, and Yang winced sympathetically. At least she knew how the story ended, since she'd met Jean's family and shared the feeling he would have killed Blake on sight if she'd been responsible for their deaths. How did that end up with you meeting Jean? Yang asked. Blake sighed and covered her face with one hand. It was while I was arguing with him over the bomb. Jean was in the room, along with one other person. It was a dust storage compartment and not exactly somewhere you would have expected to find passengers. But I guess that was the whole point of him being there. He was having sex with someone, wasn't he? Mid-coitus. Blake groaned. Yang's grin grew to shit-eating proportions, but the faunus only glared up at her. Laugh it up, Yang, but it was almost enough to scar me for life. Needless to say, the appearance of two naked people was a little bit of a surprise. Enough so that Adam didn't even think to kill the woman as she ran away. That didn't leave Jean in a good spot though, since he was naked, unarmed, and in front of two dangerous terrorists with a vested interest in making sure he couldn't raise the alarm. Knowing Jean, I'm guessing running away wasn't his solution. More like antagonizing the dangerous man with a sword. Blake agreed. He just started to crack jokes about how Adam was compensating for his penis length with his sword, and how he'd have to step in if we set that bomb. At the time, it was ridiculous. But the thing now is, Yang tried to smile, but it fell a little flat. Blake's silence said it all, and the implications weren't lost on her either. You know full well he would have done it. Yes, he would have died for sure, no matter how tricky he is. Adam is well trained and dangerous, and Jean, well, he was stark naked. You're right though, he would have rushed in. He would have given his life to try and help his family, even if the odds were as good as nothing. This is why I want to form the daughterly duo, Yang said. This is the exact problem I want to try and fix. We need to find out why and what causes or caused this, and then understand it. We can then figure out when it's going to happen again, and take steps to help him so he doesn't get captured and messed up like he did here. You have me then, Blake said. The train fiasco went a little weird from there, but it's not worth going over. SDC droids interrupted. I took the chance to get Blake finished. To get what I assumed was a helpless civilian out of danger. And yes, Yang, I realize how stupid that is now. Either way, I thought he was innocent and weak, and decided to help get him out, and we got away. I disconnected the cars so that my old partner and the bomb wouldn't drift off, and Jean turned off. No. Blake? I'm such an idiot. Blake sighed. Before it ended, an SDC droid tried to kill me and Jean saved me from it. When I asked him how, he said he turned it off. He gave me some stupid story about how he found the switch on the back. You believe that? Seriously? It was a stressful situation, Yang. I nearly died multiple times, run around with a naked guy who had his thing waving around in my face. It's called a dick, Blake. You can say it. We're both adults. And also thrown my old life away. Blake glared and pointedly did not say it. The point is, I wasn't thinking straight and just saw 8 of my 9 lives flash before my eyes. So forgive me for not noticing this small discrepancy. How else would a naked civilian have turned off a military robot? So, he was even saving you back then, Yang said. Heck, I'm a little surprised. If he hated the White Fang so much, why would he help you? I mean, it makes sense by the time of the dock, since you probably grew on him. But there on the train? I have no idea. He knew when I entered Beacon though, and that's why I was so leery around him. That was the reason for the whole name thing? Yang laughed. Oh my god, that's rich. He was so passive-aggressive bitching at you for being ex-White Fang. It felt serious to me back then, Blake growled. He could have exposed my secret at any time. I still don't know why he didn't. Maybe he wanted to see if I'd stick to my conviction and leave the White Fang behind. Maybe that was why he helped me in the first place. Because he figured creating a White Fang traitor would be better than a White Fang corpse. She shrugged. All he had to do for the latter was let the droid finish me off, or even tell the authorities who I was when I arrived in Vale. But he did neither, Yang said. I get it. That is odd. I feel like it has to do with the White Fang. Every single time he's acted out, it's been for that. The train, the docks, the warehouses, and the mission. He hasn't so much as raised a finger unless they are involved somehow. Blake stared at the desk for a few moments before her eyes widened. Do you think he's become a huntsman for that reason? What if he came to Beacon because he wanted to get vengeance on them and figured this would be the best way? Yang winced. I don't think that was the reason. No. It fits. Blake was on a roll and wouldn't see her theory dismissed. The authorities are no use, we know that. Look at how late they arrived to the docks. It was an inferno for crying out loud. There was no way they weren't bribed off if they didn't see that. Huntsmen, however, are free to respond to any threat and are better suited to fighting against terrorists. It would give him legal immunity to find and kill every White Fang member he found. It has to be— It's not. Yang interrupted. Her stomach twisted itself into knots, but she clenched her eyes shut and pushed on. That's not the reason he became a huntsman. Then what is? Blake asked. What else fits? Shame pulled inside her, and it was hard to force herself to face it. She was used to making mistakes, but this one festered still. If this was all to work, though, then Blake needed to know the truth. They needed to share what they knew to help him. He didn't become a huntsman by choice. Yang said, he became a huntsman because of me. Because of my fuck-up. Blake listened attentively as Yang explained the way she and Jean first met. She covered everything, from her reasons for being there, to how she approached him and grew suspicious when he showed a reaction to a picture of her missing mother. The fight, looking back on it, shed all sorts of illumination on him. He hadn't been on her skill level, but he'd been impossible to pin down. A berserker who just kept on coming. He had been smashed too, which definitely should have impacted on his ability to even throw a punch. The dark-haired girl didn't interrupt, however. She simply waited until Yang was finished, until, with a weary expression, Yang explained how Jean took a bullet for her and joined Beacon. If it wasn't for him, I'd been in a jail cell. She finished. He did something he didn't want to do, signed up for something he had no interest in, just to bail me, a girl who attacked him, out of trouble. That's why you were so defensive of him at first, Blake whispered. I always wondered. You were always so quick to leap to his defense. Yang laughed bitterly, head between her hands. Can you blame me? I owed him so much. I still do. And do you know the worst part? She looked up with a frustrated smile. I don't even regret it. What? How can I regret it, Blake? It was the biggest mistake of my life and got him in trouble. But if I hadn't done it, if we hadn't been arrested, then he wouldn't be here. Blake's eyes widened, but Yang carried on. Every time I think back on it, I feel like I should be guilty. But deep inside, I'm not. It's selfish as hell, but I really do love this team. I wouldn't want to change anything. I don't want to change anything. If I could go back, I would walk straight up to him and deck him in the face. Yang shrugged one shoulder. I'd say sorry straight after, but I'd still do it. That's... Blake shook her head. Honestly, I can't say you're wrong on either account. It is selfish, and it goes against his desires. But I guess I'm selfish too. I wouldn't want to imagine a team without you guys. It wasn't what I expected, nor what I thought I wanted. She laughed. A snee, a crazy, and the one guy in Remnant who knew my darkest secret. I wasn't exactly thrilled. I can imagine. Still, I guess you can see why I don't exactly like to let you take the blame for Jean getting hurt. If it wasn't for me, he'd be back home safe. Safe in his village, surrounded by family. I basically forced him to make a shitty choice between himself and some random girl. And that he chose me. It's as unlikely as him choosing to help me on a train. Blake realized. It makes no sense. None whatsoever. I mean, at least with the docs, it could be argued he and I were closer, or maybe that I reminded him of the person who he lost. But Blake looked Yang up and down. You and I hardly look similar, Yang. There's no way he could have felt that same guilt for both of us. And even if he did, there's a difference between our cases. Yang agreed. You, at least, made it clear to him that you wanted to stop the bombing. Me? I was a huge idiot and pretty much deserved whatever I got. Yang took a deep breath and let it go with one explosive sigh. Do you see what I mean, Blake? There's something here. And I don't know what. And he sure as hell isn't going to tell me. But whatever it is, it's what's making him go into these dangerous situations. If we can find out what it is, we can help him. We can make sure we don't cause them again. And we can make sure he isn't hurt because of us. Blake finished. Her amber eyes were determined. Alright, I'm convinced. I can also see why it might be best to keep this away from Wiess. She's liable to go straight to him and demand answers. And we both know how that would end. He distracts people whenever they ask something he doesn't want to answer. Blake smirked. With Wiess, I can only think of one thing. She might like it, but it wouldn't help us get any closer to the truth. We need a different route. Blake's brow creased in thought, but she noticed Yang's confident expression. You already have an idea, don't you? I might, Yang shrugged. With the tournament coming up, it's almost guaranteed that his family will come down to watch him compete, even if they're not keen on him being here. If we need to find out more about his past, that seems the obvious choice. That's weeks away though, which is why it's option number 2, Yang said. She held up her scroll with a small grin. Funny thing about older sisters, Blake. We tend to stick together and help out in looking out after our younger siblings. I've not had much of a reason to use it, but I have Sapphire's number. Was she the oldest? Yang filled in, and also the one most likely to remember Jean when he was younger. That's a good start, but you could have done that on your own, Blake pointed out. Why did you ask me to join you with this if this is what you were gonna do? Yang grinned at her, and kept grinning until the girl's expression fell. You have something worse planned for me, don't you? You get to put that sneakiness to the test, Blakey. The headmaster wanted him for a reason, and I think we ought to know what that reason is. You want me to sneak into the headmaster's office? Yang, are you insane? That's one option, Yang said with a little shrug. But there's a perfectly good source of information in our room too. He just needs convincing to share. Convince Jean to talk. Blake groaned. Somehow that feels even worse. Headmaster's office or Jean? Yang grinned. Dealer's choice, I suppose. I hate you, Yang. Totally duo, wow! I really hate you.